would be nice if you could tell what was the idea and what was the motivation for you to participate in these events, why you are working on this project and here in Ukraine. So.
Sure. So I have known Ukraine since I was a boy. I visited Ukraine when I was 12 years old, when Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union, so before 1991. So I have known this part of the country for almost all my life. My father was a diplomat in the Amerikanskie Posolstvo в Moskvе. It means I have had a chance to see Ukraine grow from being a republic in the Soviet system to being an independent country. Ukraine is a startup. It is a startup. It's 26 years of independence, but in the life of a country, 26 years is this. What does it mean? It means that there are many opportunities and many challenges, like any startup. But if you look around this country, you see that it has all of the resources, and in particular in Kharkiv, all of the different elements to become a strong technology startup country. What do I mean by that? Well, Kharkiv, in my mind, is like Boston in the United States. Boston is a university town. I lived in Boston for 2 years. We have Harvard and MIT and Boston University, but hundreds of universities and colleges and research institutes. That's Kharkiv. Kharkiv, as you know, was Science City in the old Soviet system, and it continues to be Science City. So the opportunity to develop a strong startup, technology-based economy, I think, is pretty obvious. But why hasn't it happened? If you go to Israel, I was in Haifa about a year ago. Haifa is where Technion is. Technion is the major polytechnic university in Israel. They are the center of science. So if you walk down Haifa, the first thing I saw when I was in Haifa was a sign in Ukrainian, Ukrainska хлеб. There are hundreds, thousands of people from Ukraine and from Russia who have moved to Israel. Maybe I'm told about 20% of the country. But if you go into the technology world in Israel, 40% is either from Ukraine or from Russia around Ukraine. So they have a strong technology base. They have been very successful. If you think Israel, you think technology. Why not Ukraine? And there are a number of reasons. Part of the reasons are political. Part of them are economic. Part of them are infrastructure, structural. And that's why I'm here. I think the structure in Ukraine can be vastly improved to promote new businesses and the commercialization of new technologies. That requires a change in how people think. Failure is good. There is such a thing as successful failure. I think people in the United States accept this, in Israel they accept this. Ukraine must learn to understand this. So a change in the way people think, a change in the laws. There is a need for stronger intellectual property protection in Ukraine. Ukraine on paper is a member of the international community of countries that support intellectual property, but in fact, it's understood that the enforcement and the property rights in Ukraine are not as strong. Thirdly, there must be an open source, open architecture, transparent ecosystems, systems, infrastructures to support the creation of new business. This means, for example, incubators, co-working spaces such as the one we're in now, that are able to promote new business and really are a physical space to bring people together. It's interesting. People who do not know the technology world, they think we are all sitting in front of computers. I am here, someone is in Singapore, someone is in Russia, someone is in Brazil, and we are talking on computers. No. Like any human activity, physical interaction is important. You need a physical space. And so co-working spaces, incubators, mentoring systems, systems to promote new business are important as well. This is another thing. And finally, Ukraine needs to be able to attract foreign capital. Now, I keep this final because you need the first three things in order to attract the fourth. Think about it. If you are a U.S. investor, you are in Chicago or New York, and someone comes to you and says, please invest in Ukraine. The first reaction from most American investors will be, where is Ukraine? They know about Ukraine, but they don't necessarily know a lot about Ukraine. If you tell them it's the biggest country in Europe, they are shocked. If you say over 50 million people, they are shocked. If you explain to them the value of investing in Ukraine, they will say, okay, it makes sense. Smart people are in Ukraine. But there are smart people in Chicago. There are smart people in Germany. Why Ukraine? You must give them something special to focus on. And this is why changes in the way of thinking, changes in the laws, creation of an ecosystem, these are all important developments. Because if you can say to a U.S. investor, these are all new, but Ukraine is fully supporting this country is evolving, it has all of the pieces like Israel to become a successful tech nation, it is a startup, and so it is pivoting, it is changing to become more aggressive in this area, then I think you will attract foreign capital. So I see the opportunities here. I look at Ukraine not based upon this year or last year. I look at it over 20, 30 years. And you see the way Ukraine is moving. It is moving, maybe not as fast as we would like, but it is moving in the direction of a strong, vibrant technology economy. And so I think it's fun to be part of this. I think it's important to be part of this. It's why I'm here.
I understand. And you are now reading lectures in this IT law school, I understand, yeah? But I'm just the same from information technology business, so I'm heading the company which is outsourcing company, and also have some experience in technological startups. And the main, even if you are able to attract investor, and even if you are able to prove that it's interesting and we have great stuff here, in any case, on current stage, you have to move to the somewhere in Silicon Valley, because even if investor is ready to work with you here, they will not be ready to work with you here within Ukrainian laws. So in any case, you set up legal entity there and work from here. So education is fine, but what in the short-term perspective, what we could do, for example, in laws, to fix this issue, to let investors stay here.
Yes. So there is no question that when investors look to bring money into Ukraine, they are looking not just at technology, and this is an important point. They are looking to invest in a team of people. Very often when I meet entrepreneurs in Ukraine, I ask them, what makes you valuable? What makes you special? And they will say technology. Or they will say they are cheaper, they are less expensive. Well, less expensive. I'm sorry. Vietnam is less expensive than Ukraine. China is less expensive than Ukraine. It may give Ukraine an advantage now, but 5 years from now, it's gone. So that is not so interesting for investors. Really, it's the brain power, right? It's the value that they can bring to creating something that is new and special and different. And that is the team of people. Now, very often when I talk to the same people, entrepreneurs, they focus very much on the technology. I met some very, very smart technology people today. And we spent most of the time talking about design and technology and prototypes and so forth. All very interesting. Let me ask you, when a young teenage girl buys iPhone 8, does she know what's inside the iPhone 8? Does she know the technology? How many electrodes? How many? No. What does she know? She knows, oh, look, I can look at myself, I can take selfies, I can telephone my friends, I can watch movies. That's what she knows. It's the end result. So the team needs to focus on developing products. They need to focus on who their market is. They need to focus on how to best access this market. It means it's beyond technology. It's the team. It's the business team that becomes important. Now, you're right that currently, because there are concerns about investing into Ukraine, Very often people say, well, the business team needs to leave Ukraine. And that's because the laws are not perfect. There are concerns about the enforcement of intellectual property rights. In the short term, what one can do is simply move these intellectual property rights outside of Ukraine. It's not ideal. So creating a vehicle in, let's say, Ireland, it doesn't have to be Ireland, but let's say Ireland, and the intellectual property rights are in Ireland, and they are enforced in Ireland and the United States. We would register patents in the United States, but where the business is in Ukraine, that is the short-term solution. The key point, and I know you do outsourcing, I apologize. The key point is I want to keep the value in Ukraine. I have a friend who is, he runs a venture capital fund, about $800 million fund. And one of his companies just went public. Unicorn, billion-dollar company. And this friend of mine, he is an interesting guy. He's a former FBI agent. I asked him, I said, tell me about this company. This company was a technology company. Where did they get the technology? He said about 20% of it was in the United States. 80% of it was developed outside of the United States. Of that 80%, about half comes from Ukraine. So maybe 40% of the technology in this company came from Ukraine. I said, okay, how much was paid to the Ukrainian companies? About $1 million, maybe, altogether, in terms of fees, and so different companies, about $1 million. That's fine. $1 million is great. It's good revenue, it's good income, it creates jobs. But remember, this is 40% now of a $1 billion company. None of that value is in Ukraine. That's my focus. So it may mean in the short term that we have to move the intellectual property outside of Ukraine. And we need to do this because the laws in Ukraine are not strong enough. But in the longer term, what we really need to do is fix the intellectual property process here in this country in terms of stronger laws, stronger enforcement, so that a patent in Ukraine is considered to be the equivalent of a patent in Israel or a patent in the United States. And we don't have that now. So in order to attract investors, because of precisely what you're saying, nervousness about Ukraine, we need to move the technology offshore. Now, of course, the team is still in Ukraine. Investors aren't entirely happy with that because there is still political risk and economic risk in this country. But so long as the core intellectual property is outside of Ukraine, they can become comfortable. But in the longer term, we really want to fix. We don't want to move this offshore. It makes no sense to move it offshore. We really want it to be in this country. How do we do this? I have talked to patent experts in the United States, patent experts in Israel. If Ukraine is ready, they will jump on an airplane and come here. Because I think it's clear to anyone that knows this country, the value of the technology in this country is quite substantial. The intellectual property is a way to capture that value. And that's why we need to change the regulations.
So let's continue. Question both about that in addition to intellectual, we have also a lot of lax of laws in the stock market and the value of the legal entity if it's Ukrainian legal entity. So by fact now we are forced to do absolutely all things out of Ukraine, because if company grows and if you are want to go to the IPO and so on, we can't use any kind of Ukrainian legal entities.
Yes, so there is a separate, beyond questions of intellectual property, there are broader questions in Ukraine. The financial system, as you may know, I was a banker, and before I was a banker, I was a finance lawyer. This is an area that's close to my heart. Ukraine does not have a financial infrastructure to support the raising of capital in an inexpensive way. As you say, there is no stock market. Now, the truth is, when we are talking about investors in the startup world, the takeout is not going to be the stock market in most cases. Why? Because even if Ukraine has a great stock market, it will never be as big as NASDAQ. Just the case. It will never be as big as the London Stock Exchange. So having an exchange is valuable because you want there to be a home country market for investments. But realistically, even with a home company market, there will be investments into the NASDAQ. Now, there is a broader question. Okay, I want to now do my takeout through an IPO, let's say in the NASDAQ. Or everyone talks about ICOs. Forget ICOs. ICOs are just simply some short-term interest. They will not be sustainable in the current structure. So IPOs. And I wish to do this on the NASDAQ. You're right. Ukrainian companies are not set up at this moment to list on the NASDAQ. The regulatory changes are not that substantial, actually. It's not that difficult to change the laws in order to create a corporate structure that is more easily tradable on the NASDAQ. The more difficult problem is changing the way business people think and becoming very open to disclosure. That is not something that is currently part of the Ukrainian system. So one thing Ukraine should consider is a more developed financial system, promoting a stock market, not because I expect lots of trading in Ukraine. Yeah, sure, there will be trading, there should be, but because it will demonstrate the need for greater disclosure, and it will set a model for greater disclosure that Ukrainian businesses will understand for access to the Singapore Exchange, or the Tokyo Exchange, or the London Exchange, or the New York Exchange, or NASDAQ. All of these systems have an international level of disclosure that does not yet exist in this country. So the creation of the stock market is not because you need it for takeouts. It will not be the way people make money. A little bit of money, but it's not the major way of making money. The major way of making money will be the NASDAQ, or the Singapore Exchange, or maybe even the Warsaw Exchange. Who knows? The reason why you want the development of this system is so that Ukrainian business people become more comfortable and familiar with these international standards that are needed in order to list on the NASDAQ or list on the Singapore Exchange. In addition, Ukraine really needs to strengthen its financial markets. I came here, I've been here now for 3 years. I visit Ukraine often. I remember 2 years ago speaking to someone about Privatbank. And I said, Privatbank, I'm not sure about them. I visited them. And I used to run a bank. I was the manager of a bank. I was told, no, Privatbank never will have a problem. They are the best bank, they are solid, they are always protected. And of course what happens? Privatbank blows up. How can this happen? In the United States, we think of the banks as being the heart of the system, the stock market as being the blood. It is a way for money to circulate. In this country, we have a weak heart, maybe no heart, and no blood system. How can you have a strong economy without this? So it's an important thing. I don't think it's directly necessary for what I'm doing, because I think the takeout, the value creation, will happen either because the value will be in Ukraine and people will invest here, or because people will list on an exchange outside of Ukraine. But nonetheless, for purposes of strengthening this economy, I think there's no question. There must be stronger financial regulation. There's a good chance I will be here next year, actually, February, March. Fulbright, the Fulbright Foundation has spoken to me. I may come here to lecture on financial regulation, precisely because of the need for this.
I understand, okay. You have really great vision of in what directions we have to move. And as we are, as owners of this co-working network, we are interacting with investors a lot. And maybe this will be interesting for you. We are building our network, so this is the first co-working hub in Ukraine, and we will open hubs in every city in Ukraine within the next year, and probably in every small city in the next future. So we are going to open about 30 or 40 co-working spaces, and exactly our goal is to teach people. Because we are outsourcing, because nobody knows how to path this way to the investments.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have great ideas, a lot of people have some imagine of how to build this product, like marketing and so on, but they don't know a way how to attract finances, and actually this is relatively simple thing. So we just need to teach them.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. What I've learned in Ukraine is, it's interesting. Again, the technology is quite strong. People are very ambitious. They work very hard, very smart, highly educated, but not so familiar with the capital raising process, the investment or structuring process. I'll give you an example. I teach at Cornell Tech. Cornell Tech is a technology campus of Cornell University. We are the technology university for New York City. We have something that we call CRIT. It means critique, criticism. Here in Ukraine, it's called crash tests, where people come up with ideas and they present them and they get comments. Crash tests in Ukraine are too friendly. They may not feel friendly, but there's a lot of laughter and that's it. In the United States, when we do CRIT, there are tears. In fact, in one case, one guy punched one of the. It gets that tough. It is nasty, nasty, tough stuff. Ukraine, I think, needs to develop this sense of business, and it needs to develop this sense of hunger, really pushing hard. That means really the team again, combining the technology with the understanding of how to build a business. Now, I've talked about this with others. I know that there are many people in the United States that would be happy to help. They will not fly to Kharkiv. It's a 17-hour trip here, as you know. But they will join by video conference. At Cornell we have 3 incubators in our university. Not to mention Cornell Tech, which is where I teach, which is really a huge incubator. It's a university college, but it's really a huge incubator. One thing Ukraine should consider doing, it does not happen now, is students should be allowed to work in an incubator for school credit. So if I'm a student at Karazina, I should be allowed to come here and work on a project. Maybe there's a professor who is supervising it, there must be some oversight, and maybe I can get 3 or 4 credits. Right now, when students come here, they do it on their own free time. During university exam periods, my guess is not so many people here working. They are studying for exams. We should make it part of the curriculum. Of course, they must still do math and science and geography and so forth, but make it a part of the curriculum. So if there is, as you develop and as this co-working space develops, if there is a need to have more education in this area, as you know, I think many people in the United States would like to help. Because really, if you look at Ukraine 20 years from now, forget 20 years, 5 years from now actually, I think you will begin to see the start of a strong technology system, a strong commercialization system.
Great perspectives.
Great.
Okay, thank you, and I think it's very interesting talk, and I think that we will maybe have an opportunity to cooperate in future,
sure.
Especially in case it will grow and we will really need an input.
Not in case, when it grows.
Well, yes, correct. So, thank you.
Great, thanks
very
much.
Thank you for your time, thank you for your talk.
Great, thank you.
And let's stay connected.
Yep, sounds good.